episode 108 of the Various and Sundry podcast. I am your host, Matt Harmon, joined live from the Manahan Orthopedic Capital Center on the beautiful campus of Grace College and Theological Seminary by my good friend, my colleague, my co-host, and the man who was once the RD of Beta Hall, John Scott Sloat.
Doc, how's it? This is weird.
This is very weird.
Yeah.
We are recording in front of a live studio audience, so give yourselves a hand for being here in chapel today. Yes, all right.
Yep, we got a live studio audience because Brent forced them to be here.
That's right. So shout out to Brent, the chaplain here at Grace, good friend of ours. So we are going to do some shameless plugging right now. We're going to have a slide thrown up on the screen. We would love for you to connect with our podcast, and there are multiple ways you can do it. And so we're going to ask you to do this right now. Go ahead, take the phones out in chapel. We're actually encouraging that today.
Their phones are already out.
I know.
Let's be super real here.
Yeah, okay. So you can go follow us on Twitter at V&S You don't need to worry about emailing the show right now. You can if you want eventually, Various and Sundry Podcast at gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, Various and Sundry Podcast, and we'd love for you to go on YouTube right now and subscribe to our YouTube channel, I guess, is what we're calling that. Is that what we're calling it?
I don't know what it's called. It's a channel.
It's a channel.
I think so. Yeah,
sure. Yeah, okay. And then we would really love for you, this is the big one here, open the podcast app on your phone and subscribe to the Various and Sundry Podcast. You can find that in the Apple Podcast app, as well as other, you can find it on Spotify, pretty much any platform you find podcasts on, we are on that particular platform. So,
and if you want to go ahead and go into the Apple Podcast store and give us a 5-star review, if you want to write criticism in there, that's fine. I'm fine with it, but we need 5 stars. It helps the algorithm.
5 stars only, yes. Yes, this is all part of our plan to take over the podcast world. So, we are going to put up a slide here. We're going to invite you to participate by texting in questions on our topic. So we're going to get that up there just so you're ready. But do you want to reveal the topic now, or do you want to wait?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
okay.
I think
we are going to talk about dating and relationships. So because we're, of course, experts.
Are those groans or those murmurs?
I think it's both. All the above. Yeah. So, but let's talk sports first. So as you're kind of thinking about your questions, we typically start with a sports segment.
Yep. But nothing's really happened in the broad world of sports.
Yeah. So since we're recording here live on campus, we thought that we would actually focus our sports segment on what's happening here at Grace College. So we're going to talk some basketball. Okay, let's start men's basketball here. Are you aware of this, John, that our men's basketball team is currently ranked 9th in the country?
Yep. I see Coach Moore from time to time around campus, and always a bundle of energy bouncing off the walls.
Yes, he is.
And I always get a team update, so I'm always a fan. Do we have any basketball players here?
I hope so. They're probably required to be here. Hopefully, yes, maybe not. Okay,
there we go.
So, big game tomorrow. They play Mount Vernon, 5th in the Crossroads League. And if you're following the team at all, you know Frankie Davidson is leading scorer for the Lancers. He is on the Bevo Francis list for best small college basketball player in the country.
Wow.
Yeah, averaging 21 points a game, almost 7 rebounds a game. I've had to get past some bitterness about Frankie. Did you know this?
No, I don't.
Okay. So Frankie went to Blackhawk Christian, which is in Fort Wayne.
Okay, Fort Wayne, yeah.
And his team consistently ended my son's season every year in sectionals by destroying us.
Okay, probably because they had Frankie.
That's in part because they had Frankie. Yes. Yeah. So I'm working past that bitterness. Now I can root for him. I appreciate that. Let's talk women's basketball. Our women's basketball team also playing Mount Vernon this Saturday. Currently sitting 6th in the Crossroads League, playing Mount Vernon, and they are led by Warsaw grad Maddie Ryman. Is Maddie Ryman here today? Yeah, she recently scored her 1,000th career point in a game.
Oh, I saw this on Twitter.
So let's give it up to Maddie Ryman for that accomplishment there.
Nice work.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So that's our sports segment. I think we're ready to move on to our main topic. You ready for this, John?
As ready as I'm ever going to be. I'm here.
Yeah. So let's get the number back up. Yeah, good. There we go. You can text in questions. Brent is going to filter through those and pick out the best ones. I think we need to give a caveat on the front end, don't you? A few caveats about dating and relationships. Dating or being in a relationship is not the end all and be all.
No.
Right? It's perfectly good to be single. In fact, some of you probably shouldn't be dating. Right?
Many of you, perhaps most of you.
I don't know. I can't
should
make
not
that
be dating. Yes, I'm getting head nods from the RDs over there. Yes.
Okay, that's helpful. Yeah. There's some good things that come out of a period of singleness where you're not in a relationship, where you can work on your own personal spiritual growth and building friendships and that kind of thing.
Yes, and serving in your church and working at your job and building a career and those sorts of things are all wonderful things.
Absolutely.
Speaking as somebody who was single into, goodness, how old was I when I would think I got married at like 32?
Yeah.
Something like that? 33 maybe?
So
I don't even remember.
Not right out of college.
Not right out of college,
You did not offer the ring by spring.
No, I got engaged in October, so
okay, yeah,
that was the fall time.
Yeah. Gotcha. Actually, I got engaged in October as well. So.
Did you really?
Yeah, did you know that?
Okay.
I'm sure I didn't know that. Another caveat is, one of the difficulties in talking about dating and relationships is that the Bible doesn't directly address this topic, because obviously in the ancient world, that was not the way that you ended up married.
Yeah.
You had your parents arrange the marriage for you.
Yep.
Would you have any confidence that your parents would have arranged
no
a good
confidence
marriage
whatsoever. No confidence whatsoever.
Yeah, me either.
No offense, parents.
That
don't listen to this podcast, truthfully.
I think your parents listen to this podcast.
I think my mom drops in occasionally.
Okay.
Do your parents listen?
No.
Okay.
No.
My wife doesn't listen to the podcast either. So.
Oh, you can't throw her under the bus like that.
Well, the people that are going to go after her are going to be her parents, who consistently...
Yes, your in-laws listen to the podcast.
All the time,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, that's
all
a little dangerous, to be honest. So, all right, so as people are texting in questions, we'll hit on a few things, but do you have any bad dating stories?
I'll tell one.
Okay.
So... One of the things that happens when you don't live in a community of people that are hormonal and need relationships is you get out. Yes, I'm talking about you. Is you get out into the real world and you're working a job, you're doing all these things, and so you join this thing called online dating, which I did for I think 2.5, 3 years, something along those lines.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of shotgun style. You're just going on a lot of dates. So occasionally you have a bad one. One bad one that I had was I went out with a very nice girl, and on the first date, first and only date, she brought out her little rescue dog that she had. It was it was absolutely small. It was tiny, about the size of a rat, but uglier. It had like its eyes weren't symmetrical on the dog. It was hideous. And then she would dress it up with like sweaters and things like this. And I think the lesson here is everybody has a certain amount of crazy in them.
Yeah.
And you need to hide that as long as possible. You don't put that on display on the first date.
Yeah. About how far into a relationship would you recommend revealing some of the crazy?
Oh my goodness. Well, you got to reveal it before you take some serious steps like engagement or marriage, stuff like that. 6 months. You gotta wait 6 months to reveal the crazy.
Really, that long? You think?
At least, yeah.
Do you recommend gradually revealing the crazy, or just?
I think
all at
baby
once?
steps are appropriate. Yeah, I wouldn't do like a cold turkey, just rip off normalcy and roll with it. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
baby steps.
Yeah, okay.
This is weird with eye contact. Like, we always have eye contact when
That's
we're talking,
true.
but I'm getting like eye contact from people over here. Yeah, the RDs are looking at me and just shaking their heads. I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I doing?
Yeah, I'm sure they have stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, they deal with crazy.
They deal with
That's
crazy.
kind of their
Yeah.
job description. We deal with crazy every day.
Yeah. How about you? Any particularly poor dating stories?
So my freshman year, so I was involved in Campus Crusade for Christ.
And you went to?
I went to Ohio University in Athens, and big party school. And
yeah, historically one of the top party schools in the country.
Always a top 10 party school in the Midwest.
Okay.
So obviously why I went there.
I know. Just knowing you.
Knowing
and
me.
Knowing
yeah.
that OU does that. It just
so
cracks me up.
there was this girl that I met at a Campus Crusade meeting. The irony is that I went and asked her out after I had my very first conversation with my wife at that. So that's another story altogether. I had a long conversation with my wife. Didn't know she was going to be my wife, obviously. And then went down the steps in the lecture hall to ask out one of her friends instead. So we're still working through that. 25 and a half years later, we're basically past it, I think.
Okay.
So her name was Robin. And
you have her last name on the rundown, too.
Well, I didn't publish it openly, but
this is dangerous territory.
Robin in Ohio.
Yeah,
okay.
Robin.
Okay. So she agreed to go out with me, which I was stunned to begin with because she was an attractive woman. And so we decided we're just going to go low key. We're going to go out for a meal, and then we were going to come back to my dorm room to watch a movie. Okay.
What movie?
I don't remember what movie it was. Sorry.
All right. I was looking for a good detail.
No, sorry.
All right.
Anyway, we get into the room, and this is like think of like beta or alpha hall kind of like dorm room, okay? And it was a triple, so there's like no space in there at all. And we had this like little tiny TV that was like a 13-inch color TV, which, you know, all the rage back in the day.
Were you allowed to have TVs in your dorm rooms back in the day? When I came to Grace many moons ago, we were not allowed to have televisions.
Well, it was a public university. I mean, they're not going to police that. But we didn't have access to like cable or anything. So, you know, we could get the local PBS station over the rabbit ears, which was riveting, of course. Anyway, so I put 2 chairs for us to sit in, and they're like spaced a good like 3 or 4 feet apart. So I'm not even like trying to cozy up to her, playing it slow. And I go to turn off the overhead lights, but there's still lights on in the room. And there's other people in the room. She proceeds to freak out. She thinks I'm like about to make the moves on her. So she gets all nervous. She's like, what are you doing? Well, to see the movie, I thought it'd be easier if we kind of turned some of the lights off. And she's like, well, I'm really uncomfortable with this. Like, she starts to freak out. She's like, I'm done. I'm leaving. That's it. That's the date.
Wow.
So she's getting up to leave, and it's dark out. And on a big public university campus, you don't want a woman to walk back alone. So I'm like, please just let me walk you back to your dorm. Like, I understand you don't want to be here, fine, but please don't walk back across campus by yourself. She's like, nope. I'm like, really, please let me. So what happens is I basically follow her, I stalk her, which is probably even worse, from like about 15 feet behind, all the way back to her dorm room. So, yeah. The irony is she still was friends with my wife and ended up being in the wedding party at our wedding.
Goodness.
Yeah. She was a little odd, I'm not going to lie.
Oh my goodness! So many thoughts that I don't feel like I can say.
Well, you know, we probably
there's certain laws in place now that I think would prevent some of this action.
Not pretty. So, in any case, so tell us how you met your lovely wife.
Yes,
and started dating her.
My wonderful wife Andrea. She was living in Indianapolis. We met online. We met in Kokomo. Went to a restaurant called the Half Moon Brewery, I believe. We met up there. Had our first date. And proceeded to date for the next about year.
That sounds right.
So, every most Friday or Saturdays, I would either drive down, get an Airbnb, and stay for a majority of the weekend, and we would hang out, and we would hit up the Indianapolis Museum of Art down there. If you have not been there, it's lovely.
Yeah.
They have beautiful gardens and stuff like that. We almost got married there. Of course, there's a certain virus that had something to say about our wedding. There's not too much more to that story. I think, probably the funniest part is my dad. So I'm from Long Island, New York originally. Any New Yorkers out there? All right, just a few of you. I so appreciate that. So I was born there. My dad is raised there, and if you're a New Yorker, you have a guy for everything, right? If right? If something's got to be fixed, I got a guy for that. I need my taxes done. I got a guy for that. And you just sort of go around. Well, I told my dad that I was wanting to propose to Andrea, and he goes, "I got a guy for that." And so I talked to this fella named Mel in Texas. And I called him on, and I started just saying everything I wanted, basically. And he goes, "John, stop talking. Do you have a picture? Do you have this? Do you have that?" I said, yes. Send it all to me. And I emailed him photos and all these things. He called me back 20 minutes later. "Yeah, I can get this done. Here's what it's going to cost. Do you want it?" I went, "Sure." And then he emails me like an address to mail everything to. Like I had my grandmother's ring, all these things. Mailed it off, and then Brent and I actually left the country at that point. We went to visit friends in Germany, and hopped on over to France. That's another good story for another time, involving electric scooters. And we landed, and it was Brent and Kirsten Criswell, and we landed, and I had all these voicemails from this guy, Mel, and the ring was coming back, and I got the ring that Friday, and drove down Friday night and proposed Saturday afternoon at Eagle Creek Park in Indianapolis.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sweet. Well, my story is a little different. So Kate and I were...
You guys dated through college.
We met in college.
Yeah.
And met our freshman year, became good friends, but didn't start dating until our senior year.
And she's here, right?
She is here.
Where is she?
I don't know where she's sitting, but I'm blinded by the lights anyway.
That's a song, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So this is a great longer story. I'm going to try to tell the short version. I remember when we talked about telling the story on this episode, you're like, you have to be concise. So I'm going to try. Yes. So we were part of the leadership in Campus Crusade together, and by our senior year, her group of girlfriends and my group of guy friends had all paired up except for us. So we spent a lot of time hanging out in that awkward sort of, we're not dating, but all of our friends are dating each other kind of thing. So fast forward to our senior year, I take her to the airport for winter break, because she lived at that time in Massachusetts. That's where her parents were from. I take her to the airport, and somewhere in that fall semester, we had done one of those things where you have this conversation of, hey, if I'm not married at 35 and you're not married at 35...
You made a deal.
We were each other's backup.
Okay.
Yeah. So we had talked about that, kind of locked that in. I think, locked it in at 35.
And then when you guys hit 35, you got married?
No, we had been married long before that. So in any case, I take Kate to the airport. This is back in the day when you could actually, if you didn't have a ticket, go through security, go to the gate with somebody. So she's getting ready to board the plane. I give her a hug, leave. And she sits down on the airplane. She's talking with the woman next to her. And the woman next to her asks her, was that your boyfriend that you hugged before you got on the plane? And my wife says, no. So they start talking, and this woman that she's sitting next to, they strike up a conversation, and Kate asks her, so why are you going out to Colorado, that's where they were flying. And she says, well, actually, I am going out to meet this guy from college who we agreed that if we got to the age of 35 and weren't married, that we would start dating and get married. He called me like 2 weeks ago. I've been dating this guy who is going nowhere, so I dumped him, and I'm flying out to meet him, and we're going to get married in a few weeks. So that kind of freaked Kate out a little bit. Fast forward into January. We had this leadership retreat as part of Campus Crusade, and we played this really dumb game called the question game. There's a group of like 25 students and staff from Campus Crusade, and the rules were basically you could ask one other person in the room any question you wanted. And there was a staff guy with Campus Crusade who asked me, so when you...
I don't like this guy in this story.
No, he's not a good dude.
He's a bad guy.
So I'm sitting next to Kate on a couch in this old farmhouse that we're hanging out in this retreat. And he asked the question, so when you graduate and move on and are serving, I was planning on going to Albania for a year, do a missions trip. When you're in Albania, some village, what girl from this Campus Crusade ministry will you miss the most and why?
What a jerk. That's 2 questions, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, obviously the answer is Kate. We're good friends, but that's it. We're just friends. So for the next 2 weeks, that's echoing in my head. We're just friends. We're just friends. Well, after that retreat, we had this conversation where I'm like, okay, Kate, just want to clarify. I think you're amazing. I can see myself marrying a woman like you. She's like, I can see myself marrying a guy like you. One of those really dumb conversations that you have, which you're like, what are you doing if you're not? Yeah, anyway. So the great thing is that then clarifies the whole oh, we're just friends. So we start spending this enormous amount of time together. Like every waking minute available that we're not in class, we're hanging out together. And in that, I ask her, hey, there's this wedding. Why don't you go with me to this wedding? Just as friends, we'll hang out. It'll be fun. Let me think about that. So in these next 2 weeks, I'm just thinking, okay, am I really just friends with this girl? So I do the spiritual thing. I decide to pray and fast for a day, trying to figure this out. And I read part of C.S. Lewis's book, The Four Loves. And I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, okay.
It's a good book.
It's a good book. And I'm realizing as I'm doing this, oh my gosh, I am madly in love with this woman. Legit hardcore, crazy in love with this woman. But I've just told her we're friends, so God, unless you force me to say something to this woman, I'm not going to say anything about it. 2 days later, we're hanging out at her house, and she's like, oh, by the way, I need to talk to you about going to that wedding with you. This staff woman who disciples me with Cruise said this really crazy thing. She said that we need to define the relationship a little bit more clearly because we're spending so much time with each other. And I told her we're just friends, and if anything would change, he would say something to me. So we're sitting on this couch. It's 11:30 at night. And I stand up and I start pacing back and forth, having this little internal dialogue with God of, I can't believe you did this to me. What are you doing? And so Kate is getting nervous, why are you pacing? What are you doing? And I'm thinking, well, I have 2 options. I can confess my undying love to this woman, or I can just leave awkwardly. I chose to sit back down, and I said, okay, I need you to just let me say what I need to say here. And before you interrupt, just let me finish what I need to say, because I need to get this clear. I said, what I've been realizing over the last few days is that I am falling in love with you. And I wasn't going to say anything, but clearly God has orchestrated these circumstances to make me make this clear to you. And so I want to pursue a relationship with you, that we are going to date, and we're going to pursue that with the goal of seeing if the Lord would have us end up be married.
And how did your wife respond to this?
So she pauses, and I'm not making this up. She says, I think I want to throw up. Now, I had sort of anticipated a variety of different responses that could come from me saying these words, but I think I'm going to throw up is not one of them. So I explained to her, okay, look, take some time, pray about it, and in the meantime, I am going to basically try to woo you. I don't use that word, but I'm going to court you, I'm going to pursue you. And so for the next 2 weeks, I'm leaving chocolates at her door. I'm buying her flowers. I am putting on the full court press. There's a fine line between stalking and pursuing, and I was like walking back and forth kind of between that. So apologies to the Title IX office. So anyway, fast forward a week, I'm like, so where are we at, Kate? What are you thinking? She's like, I don't know. And she's like, without saying it, she's like, I'm trying to figure out a way to let you down easy without, crushing your, little heart there. And so fast forwarding, skipping over some things. So this is 2 weeks after I have professed my undying love. And we are going to this conference with Campus Crusade. It's at a hotel, the Adams Mark Hotel in Indianapolis, on a blue couch. We're sitting there chatting, and I'm like, does it bother you that now that everybody in our friend circle knows that I've basically said I want to date you and I'm falling in love with you? And she says to me, no, it doesn't bother me at all. And I'm like, why does that not bother you? Well, because I know what my answer is going to be. Pause. And she's like, well, I was like, well, so you're going to tell me what your answer is? She's like, well, I was going to wait a couple days, but I guess I can tell you now. Yeah, please. She's like, my answer is yes. I'm sorry, can you just clarify what you mean by yes here, just so we're on the same page? Yes, I want to pursue a dating relationship with you to see if the Lord would have us be together in marriage. Okay? Now, I'm not making this up either. At that very moment.
Did you say you're going to throw up?
No, I did not say that. I should have.
Okay.
At that moment, a bride and a groom walk into the lobby of the hotel where we're sitting. And there's this argument taking place between like the bride and the groom and the wedding party. Clearly, a lot of alcohol had been consumed on the way to the hotel. In any case, I look over there and I say to Kate, I feel really sorry for that woman on her wedding day. And Kate's like, well, why?
Oh, this is a line.
It is. Yeah. It's probably the best I've ever had. And I say, well, because this is her wedding day and she's not even the most beautiful woman in the room right now.
Yeah, yeah. No, do not clap for that. You are all better than that. It's a bad line. The initial groans, I'm with you.
Yeah, there's more to that story.
Yeah,
but
that was the abbreviated version.
Yes. Okay. We have to move on to take questions, so we're going to pull in.
Kate will be down here on the floor for you to meet afterwards.
Yeah, if you want to meet the lovely Kate, she'll come down.
If you want to interact with her a little bit. Yeah.
All right, go ahead, Brent. Hit us up with these hard-hitting questions.
All right. Plenty of questions here, so I just want to initially say, don't feel like you've got to give a completely full answer. Some of these questions are too big to give a complete answer to, but maybe just a few initial thoughts as you hear them.
Okay.
All right, plenty of good questions. Here we go. A lot of people are asking the question, how do I know I'm ready today? When am I ready today? You kind of opened up that door a little bit at the beginning, basically telling them all they're not ready to date. So how do they know when they're ready? What sort of things should they be looking for to know that they're ready to date?
Well, I'll start with, ideally you need to be in a good place spiritually. Be in a good place with your relationship with God where you're consistently pursuing that, growing in that. And I would add with that, that you're going after a dating relationship with the right kind of motives, not to fill some gaping hole in your life, but as a way of adding on to your already existing friendships and that sort of thing as a way of enhancing it.
I think life stability is also a part of that, like making sure that you're secure in adding to the spiritual things and certainly, but making sure you're part of a local church and thriving, have a steady job potentially, depending on your station in life, and not in the middle of, oh, well, I'm moving in a month, or anything like that. Just trying to make sure that you're a stable human.
A stable human.
A stable human. We need more. Yeah.
They're in short supply. Yeah. Okay. That's a quick answer to that one. You got another one for us, Brent?
I'm sure there
absolutely.
are more things.
All right. So a lot of questions.
Oh, boy.
A lot of questions about how do I begin getting to know someone but not lead them on? That balance between we're becoming closer, we're friends, but I don't want to do anything manipulative or inappropriate. I don't want to lead them on, but I want to get to know them to see if we might start dating. Advice for that?
My first thought is groups are great. Go to Starbucks on campus. I mean, I don't know if students do this anymore, but I would play euchre at what is now Starbucks on campus till like 1 a.m. Most weekends. And that was just a really good way to get to know people and to hang out in groups. And don't put the pressure on yourself either that like this has to be marriage or bust. A perfectly good relationship is one where you look the other person in the eye and go, I'm not frankly that interested in you, and walking away. That is a successful relationship. I'm serious. Anything you add?
I think it's always good just to be clear about your intentions. That doesn't mean that you need the first or second conversation you have with someone. Hey, I want to get to know you to see if we're compatible to date or anything like that. But especially as you're beginning to increase the frequency of maybe texting them or interacting with them, it's not a bad idea just to be honest about, hey, I'm interested in getting to know you a little bit better. I think that we might be able, that this might be something that could lead to a dating relationship.
Yeah. And do things in person, not over text messages or Snapgram or whatever else is going on out there.
Snapgram? Did you just say Snapgram?
That was intentional.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead, Brent.
Get off my lawn.
All right, kind of a part 2 to that question is, all right, we've been dating for a while. How do I then decide, okay, this is the one. This is the one I want to marry? What was that like for you two? What advice would you give for trying to recognize that?
Yeah. I think when I realized that I was going to marry my wife is when I was willing to sacrifice a number of things, realizing that my own desires were not the most important, but me being with her was more important than those desires. And I think that's when I knew.
Yeah, I think for me, it was a combination of confirming and recognizing just the godly character of Kate and realizing this is the kind of woman who is helping me to grow in my own relationship with God, and realizing that I can and want to, not just that I can, but I really want to build a life with this woman. Mm-hmm. And that was sort of the turning point there. But I will say, as a caveat to that, oftentimes in a dating relationship, one person gets there first before the other one.
And that can end a relationship very quickly.
So you got to be careful about navigating that. Like, I was probably about 3 months ahead of Kate all along the way in terms of when I was ready to be like, I could propose to her right now, but I know she's not ready for that. So I had to kind of patiently wait for her to get to the same point that I was. And so that's a tricky dynamic to navigate, just being patient if you realize I'm a little ahead of the other person on that.
All right, we're diving in here. All right, you ready for this next question? Here we go. So I'm going to kind of make this a little bit of a two-part. A lot of questions about, hey, I appreciate physical touch. So how do I create good boundaries or make healthy decisions in that way, godly decisions in that way, but still include that in my relationship? And then a lot of questions about what if a couple has gone too far? What is some advice for that couple in terms of making better decisions in the future? What should they do? Even as far as, should we break up? I had a lot of people asking, should we break up if that's something like that has happened? So give us some thoughts.
Yeah, I never want to look at a couple and go, yeah, you should break up in a broad sense, right? Like I don't want to throw out a sweeping, like, if XYZ happens, you should break up. I think those need to be handled individual situation by individual situation. I think if you go too far in a relationship, confession and repentance are really your best friends. Being able to go to other people in your life who have a spiritual stake in it, a small group, somebody at your church, probably not your parents, if I'm being truthful, but somebody at your church, and just being able to be a part of confession and repentance, I think, can be quite healing in those situations.
Yeah, I agree. I think breaking up may not be the right decision. That's a case-by-case situation. But it may warrant at least a temporary sort of pulling back.
Sure.
And reevaluating, has the physical component of our relationship kind of taken over everything? And trying to find some better boundaries in terms of trying to limit the amount of time you're spending alone. Trying to re-enter more of group dynamics where you're hanging out together. And just, look, everybody knows what sort of scenarios can lead to temptation, and being smart about trying to avoid those. And oftentimes it might take a little bit of accountability from someone outside your relationship to say, how are you guys doing in that area? What are some ways that we can be praying for you? Are there things that you need to kind of talk through? So I agree. It's not an automatic deal breaker if there's sin in that area in a relationship. Just like, there are lots of different ways that sin shows up in relationships. The issue becomes oftentimes, how do we deal with it? Do we confess it to each other? Do we repent? Do we pursue reconciliation and obedience, take steps in those directions? Maybe one more here before we...
Sure.
All right. There were quite a few questions about how do you break up well? How do you step into that well and then keep a friendship going and not have it be just, we break up and then we're never speaking again. So give some advice.
This is like 90% of the reason I never dated in the Winona Lake, Warsaw community. So I just never had to see that person again. Let's see. Part of it's just being mature about it. Like, it's going to be uncomfortable for a while, but try to break up with the person in the way you would want to be broken up with if you had to go through that, showing them respect, kindness, and I think that's where I'll leave it.
I think being kind and honest is important, and being clear. I think sometimes what happens is if there's a lack of clarity, a person might think, well, I broke up with that person. And the other person's like, that was a breakup? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, nothing worse. I remember that happening to a friend of mine on campus where he got broken up with and did not realize he had been broken up with.
Yeah, that's rough. But at the same time, I think when that happens, whether or not there can be a sort of friendship that continues past that really is just going to vary.
Yeah, depends on the people.
And you have to realize it's natural to want to have some of that space after the breakup where you're not like, oh, okay, well, we're no longer dating, but hey, you want to go grab coffee anyway, just as friends? Like, that's just not going to happen probably for a while, if at all. It makes it more complicated when it's in friend groups, obviously. That really gets tricky.
Yep.
But just try to be a mature believer and be kind and gracious and clear, I guess.
And date out of town.
And date out of town, yes.
That's right.
That's the real lesson here. Okay, well, we probably need to move on to make sure we land the plane on time here, John.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do it.
So typically our next segment is what we call This Day in Sports History, where we talk about something that happened on that day in sports. And since we are recording here in the chapel for Grace College, and really on the floor of the Manahan Orthopedic Capital Center, where the basketball games here take place, here is our This Day in Sports History from January 21st, 2015. You ready for this? Do you want to read it, or
No.
You typically read it.
I do typically read it, and you're stepping on me a little bit there.
All right. Well, my apologies.
I'm just joking.
I'm sorry. Will you forgive me?
Yeah, I do.
Thank
yes.
you.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for your confession and repentance. January 21st, 2015, Grace women's basketball sets the NAIA record for best free throw percentage in a single game, shooting 28 of 28 in a win at Mount Vernon.
There you go.
And
yes. Let's give it up for the ladies. Yes, women's basketball team.
Where did we get that information from?
Yeah, we want to give a shout out to Josh Newhart, our sports information director, who is terrific at his job. So let's give it up for Josh Newhart here, SID here at Grace College. All right, last segment, John. One thing you liked this week.
Yeah, so my one thing I liked this week, and I thought this would be good for college students. Well, maybe. There is a believe it's 5-part documentary series on ESPN, 30 for 30 on O.J. Simpson. It won awards. It came out 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And he has recently, within the last year, hopped back on Twitter. And he is an odd guy. He's out of jail now, all these things. If you want to know what it was like to grow up in the 90s, probably 80s into the 90s, some of my first memories are of the O.J. trial, actually.
Okay.
So the O.J. Simpson 30 for 30 documentary.
And this is going to show a little bit of our age difference here. So that happened. So the whole car chase, the white Bronco chase, all of that happened while I was on an airplane flying over the Atlantic Ocean to go to Albania for a summer.
Oh, man.
So we get to Albania, and I'm in this Albanian home, and we're watching on TV people talking about O.J. Simpson in German, of all things. And we're trying to figure out what happened in the world when we left. And it was just a bizarre sort of thing to experience this huge cultural phenomena an ocean away.
So I was living in New York at the time. I was like 4 or 5 years old. And the New York Knicks were in the NBA Finals against the Houston Rockets, and they did side-by-sides. So they had, on the TV, they had one half of it was the Knicks NBA playoff game, and on the other side was the white Bronco being chased down in California.
Yeah, bizarre. Can you imagine if they had social media then?
Oh, it'd be insane.
Even crazier.
But you should all go watch it because it's crazy.
It is. So my one thing I liked, I recently finished a book by Cary Elwes, I think is how you pronounce his name. It's called As You Wish, Inconceivable Tales from the Making of the Princess Bride. So Cary Elwes is the guy who plays Wesley in The Princess Bride. And it's a sort of behind-the-scenes look at the making of the movie. Lots of funny stories in that. And really greatly enjoyed reading through that. So that's my one thing I liked.
Lovely.
All right. So, John, we have talked about Grace College sports. We have talked about dating. We have talked about O.J. Simpson. We have talked about
Didn't know
Princess
O.J. was
Bride.
going to make an appearance today.
Yeah. So I think by definition, we have covered our various and sundry topics. Are you ready to call mission accomplished?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Well, in light of that, all that's left to say is until next time, the Lord bless you all real good.
Later.